Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing today? You lovely, lovely, lovely people. Now let me fix this real quick while this loads here. Hi. you all slept amazing. Or for those of you going to sleep, I hope you're going to sleep and enjoying the experience. Good morning, lovely voidlings. Oh, Shay, you adorable little bunny. It's been a long, long time. I hope you're doing alright. Am I still asleep? No, my audio's definitely going through. I can actively see my audio. So, lovelies, how's everyone doing today? Morning nap time. We're going to go through and do our normal thing. Oh, and there's that thing that I forgot to mute. 1 second. There we go. No, you have to get ready, unfortunately. Trust me, if I could have all of you just stay home and not have to do anything, you know I would. Just waking up. I feel you. Alright, thank you for the follow, Shadow Spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's see. I finished the moth model. Nice. Very, very nice. Alright. Let's see who we have today. We have Assassin Angel. Congratulations on getting second. Lunar. Congrats on getting first. And Nelia. Congrats on getting third. Because I am talking softly. That is exactly what the stream says, does it not? Soft-spoken gaming. Now, where were we? Alright. Thank you for checking in, Poison. Good morning. Good morning to you. Meow Kitty Cat. And good morning to you, Dasha. Good morning, Ziggy and My Chemical Flame. Good morning, Rose and Emu. Good morning, Amy and Nelia. Good morning, Teamy Zoo and Dea the Balkan, or Death. Good morning, Assassin and Panda and Solian. Morning, Wyvern and Onyx. Good morning, Danny Cat and Infernal. Good morning, Julia and Catbox. Good morning, Oliver the Tiny Wizard. Morning nap time. Morning, Solian and Teddy Bear. And Mac Miller and Zenek. Good morning, Shay. And good morning, Pan Dragon. Get some sleep, little wizard. You know you need to. I mean, how else are you gonna go about your day casting your little spells? Alright, let's change scenes real quick. One second. Oh, I'm a little bit too close, aren't I? So, whoop. There we are. There we are. Then, get some sleep. Get some sleep. Sleep is so very, very important. Mm. Mm. Cozy. That is the goal for today. Jean, can I bother my friend for a minute? If you should be in bed, you should be in bed. You should not be bothering your friend. Mm. A lullaby. I don't know if I know any lullabies. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're getting sick. I don't think I know any lullabies. Except the classics. You know, the rock my baby. Or the one from what was that show? Somebody requested it the other day. The soft, giddy, warm, giddy little ball of fur. Happy giddy, sleeping giddy. Purr, purr, purr. Now I would love marshmallows. Just toasted marshmallows. Don't even need chocolate. Nice little fire. Stick marshmallows. Would be amazing. Mm. I really wish I could go camping again. It's too cold, but how nice it would be to be out in nature. A little fireplace, trees all around, not a single worry except what I was going to do that day. Fun little hikes, laying about. That's always so nice. A s'more is specifically a sandwich made of a granola cracker, a marshmallow, and a bar of chocolate, layered and eaten. That is what a s'more is. Mm. Good morning, Addie. And a whole bar of chocolate. Depends on the size of the chocolate. But it is enough that it should be roughly the size of the cracker. And I don't know if granola crackers exist in other parts of the world. So granola cracker is almost like a cookie blend. But it's more like almost like a pie crust. In fact, you can make pie crusts out of granola crackers. And granola crackers specifically are significantly larger than normal crackers. You never think about the things that you have to explain. They get so used to being normal. That's the point of the granola cracker. It is more of a cookie than it is a cracker. Graham crackers. Not granola, sorry. Thank you, Tasha. Graham crackers, not granola crackers. They both begin with G. This is why I have other people to keep me real. Go enjoy your Roblox. It is early. To be fair, a graham cracker is not that big. It just is that. Our other crackers are normal sized. But I am American, which is why I am 6'4". So I guess they had to make me big too. But a granola cracker sounds good. I don't know if it would work. mm-hmm. America is so funny to me sometimes. My favorite femboy, is that true? Neptune versus. I'm going to play the Eat the World game I told you about last time. Oh, have fun. I love games where you eat things. There was a game growing up called Feeding Frenzy. Where all you were was a little fish and you ran around eating other little fish. And I don't know why, but it's something that I just enjoyed doing. Maybe because it has a clear path of growth. Every little fish you eat makes you grow a little bit bigger till you upgrade. And you eat another one, and another one, and another one. Good morning, Grimlock. How are you doing today? I mean, Amelia. I've always only just woken up. Every day before stream, I wake up because it is 3:30 a.m. Why no humming noises? What was that about ginger and humming? Ginger and humming. I'm very confused. Well, that is the goal. That is the point of ASMR, is to make you sleepy or relaxed. One of the most beautiful places I ever saw in my life was Switzerland. There's something so beautiful about it. In a train driving through the countryside, and everywhere I look, I see these little houses and the basin of this mountain. And everything was so green and incredible. And seeing it made me realize why a nation like that would stay out of most things. Because what else do you need when you have a place so far above it all? So green and lush and the river right there. Hello, Mary. Yes, thank you for the follow. For those who are new here, we do 2 kinds of streams. Thank you for the headbands. We do these soft, spoken, relaxing streams. And we also do more chaotic, higher energy evening streams. So if one is not to your liking, remember there will be another one. The first stream begins at 3:30 MST, or whenever I wake up. And the second one begins at 4 p.m. MST. Every single day except Sunday. That one the schedule gets messed up. I've never been to Australia, but it looks nice. And I will have to say I've never disliked an Australian. I'm sure there are some rude people, but every Australian I've met I've loved. Maybe all the bad ones stay in Australia and the good ones come and visit me. Well, Oliver, tiny little wizard, tell all of Australia I say hi. And when I say all of Australia, I mean you track down every Australian you see and be like, hey yo, Gene says hi. You lived in Sydney, you would 100% recommend it. That sounds very lovely. If only it was not so expensive to live there. If only it wasn't so expensive to live. I just want to live and not have to worry about things. Is that too much to ask for? One second, I need to turn on a light. I forgot to turn it on. That's fair. I have returned. Hopefully you didn't miss me too much. See, I'm one of those weirdos who prefers light things. So when I look at dark screens, it tends to make me feel more tired. But light mode helps wake me up. Queensland, Mexico to Queensland. That sounds very interesting. I wish you luck. Light mode makes me sleepy. Very interesting. Also, I use light mode just to upset people like Katamia now. You go blind from light mode. How dare you? Embrace light mode. There's only one thing that I use. Oh, Song of Storms from Legend of Zelda. There's only one thing that I actively, intentionally got on my way to use dark mode in. That's an application at work, because they changed this color scheme, and now the color scheme is awful. It was all lovely greens and blues before. And then randomly, I don't know what that is, Neptune. And randomly, they swapped it to bright oranges and yellows. It was just the absolute worst. And it made it so difficult for me to find anything. And dark mode at least was more uniform in its coloring scheme. Thank you for the check-ins, y'all. Thank you for the check-ins and the hydrates. I appreciate it. Oi, oi. Yeah. Orange is such an awful color when it comes to things like that. Good morning, unstable raccoon. I always imagine that you're on the verge of exploding whenever I see your name. Please don't explode. Thank you for the stretch. I appreciate it. Good morning, Fishykin. A pretty little heart. Hey, it's 69. Hey, it's Aura. I wonder if Vanya's here. Oh, finally Kamiya checks in. Kamiya's been here for so very, very long. My own dear sweet Maud. And they waited for ages to check in. Can't believe it. You forgot. How could you forget something like that? I think it's time to read a little poetry. What do you think? Shall we do my favorite since I couldn't get a poetry book yesterday? Or we could read little love poems. Wow, talking to me. I'm glad I was worthy of your presence. So the point of having mods is that you get to bully them without any complaints, right? Am I right on that one? One second while I fix this here. Oh, is that a new follow? Thank you for the follow, Pharaoh Flank. Hi, Ghost. A poetry? You have to see. I can find my little Kindle library. This it. There it is. A Diary of Romantica. Celia Martinez. February 14th. Or should we read the one for today? I will start with February 14th. Find me under the stars as all the clouds start to clear. I'll remind you of your beauty with little whispers in your ear. Find me in the sunshine after a long day of rain. I'll help you see a life full of color when everything seems unbelievably plain. Find me under a warm blanket on the coldest day of the year when love feels too far. I'll show you that I'm ready here. Cute. Poor Sakona, poor Sakona. I'll come beat up your period. God, can't believe you have to deal with periods. Here to fight them for you. Hello, me, Cherry. Welcome to the Mashery, and thank you for the follow. Arrow Flank. Alright. Our next one. February 17th. This one was written on my birthday. Those of you not knowing what I'm reading, a woman wrote a diary of romantica, where she wrote a poem almost every day, all kind of love themed. Volume 1 is called Lovers Forgotten. One second. I know for a fact I could never be a woman, because I've heard of the issues people have had with periods, where one girl thought she was just having cramps, and it turns out her appendix had burst, which is absolutely crazy to me, that you could be sitting through all of that and be like, yeah, no, this is fine. Which really puts in perspective dealing with cramps on a monthly basis. Another few words for the lover I've yet to find, to provide some direction so he can find me when it's time. I can't sleep with socks on, which you learned after our 10th date, when I asked you to stay over because I could hardly stay awake. I felt a peace of mind the next morning when I woke up by your side. You were still asleep, but I thought, damn, you're really mine. You made breakfast that morning, waffles and hot tea. You smiled as you fell deeply in love with me. Time passed and it was Christmas. We were kissing by the tree. You said you had a gift to give and asked, will you marry me? Now I know this hasn't happened yet, but let me foolishly dream that fairy tales aren't just in books. They're made for people like you and me. Emu Lori. I do. I do soft-spoken ASMR in the mornings, whether gaming or reading poetry or talking like this. Or I do gaming in the afternoons. The only exceptions are Saturdays and Sundays, where I do survival games with Dar, or some Scrandle and other games with Vanya. Happy Monday, I suppose. December 6th. On the 6th day of Christmas, a poem came to mind about a handsome stranger who, in this life, I've yet to find. I've never met him before, but sometimes he's in my dream. He tells me to stay patient, and that distance isn't always what it seems. I think of him when I feel lonely, and I wonder if he feels the same. I wonder if we've ever met before, or if I already know his name. I got a steal of a deal a few days ago. Oh, what'd you get, Grimlock? I feel like he'd be a sweet guy, holding my hand as I walk down the stairs, pulling me closer on the days when I'm really anxious, and always reminding me how much he cares. We'd talk about our past, and I'd tell him the reason why I'm so scared. I think that when it comes to love, you can never really be prepared. He'd say it was always going to be us, that past lovers were never meant to be. He'd flash a sweet smile, warm and welcoming, and I'd smile back because I completely agree. Oh, fun. I love those kind of games, fun little party games to do with your friends. March 1st. I need to start taking myself on dates, the kind that I've always wanted to go on. A picnic as the sun sets, iced cinnamon chai lattes at dawn. I'll take pictures of myself laughing, surprise myself with love that feels like home. Maybe I'll take a plane to Paris, or visit every single fountain in Rome. I'd spend an autumn in Vermont, spend a day walking Central Park, write poems in a vegan diner, and watch my eyes light up with a spark. I'll take myself on a drive in theater, fill the trunk of the car with blankets that are warm. I'd make hot chocolate and homemade cookies, and cuddle up during a storm. I'll go back to Mexico, dance in the middle of La Plaza, eat tacos dorados and tamales, and drink atole from my favorite taza. I want to experience all this with someone, but imagine how special if it came from me. After all, there's so many experiences to be had, so many pretty views left to see. Nixie, that sounds insane. Hi, Sally Silky. November 5th. Honestly, there's no right time to meet someone new. And maybe that's why I keep delaying the reunion of me finding you. The opportunity might be out there, but getting lost isn't worth the time, as I'm not a teenager anymore, and I'm not willing to convince someone to be mine. You'd shake your head at that. I know that you wouldn't need convincing. But that doesn't change the fact that in the past my heart has been left wincing. Does that hurt to hear? I guess I do wonder how we'll meet. Will it be in a sunny restaurant? Or will you bump into me in the street? Or I would probably bump into you. I have a bad habit of being in my head. Maybe I'll accidentally spill some coffee, or drop my favorite loaf of sourdough bread. Would you smile when I turn red and the embarrassment flushes my cheeks? Would you walk away from it hesitantly and think about my laugh for weeks? Would you stay a moment longer when supermarket limes accidentally drop on the floor? When our hands graze for just a second? Would you pull back wishing it had been for more, or much, much more? Like I said, there's no right time to meet someone new. Someone can never explain somebody like you. These are really pretty. Very melancholy. I think I need something to break this up. How are we doing over there, lovelies? Everyone's still doing alright? Let's do some Poe. You and your tone tags. What should we do? What should we do? I saw thee once only years ago. I must not say how many, but not many. It was a July midnight, and from out a full-orbed moon that like thine own soul soaring sought a precipitant pathway up through heaven, there fell a silvery silken veil of light, with quietude and sultriness and slumber, upon the uptorn faces of 1,000 roses that grew in an enchanted garden, where no wind dared to stir unless on tiptoe fell on the upturned faces of these roses. They gave out in return for the love light their odorous souls in ecstatic death, fell on the upturned faces of these roses, that smiled and died in parterre enchanted by thee and by the poetry of thy presence. Clad all in white upon a violet bank, I saw thee half reclining while the moon fell on the upturned faces of the roses, and on thy own upturned alas in sorrow. Was it not fate that on this July midnight, was it not fate, whose name is also sorrow, that bade me pause before the garden gate to breathe the incense of those slumbering roses? No footsteps stirred, the hated world all slept, save only thee and me. I paused, I looked. Bear in mind this garden was enchanted. The pearly luster of the moon went out. The mossy banks and the meandering paths, the happy flowers and the rebinding trees, seen no more. The very roses' odors died in the arms of the adoring airs. All expired save thee, save less than thou, save only the divine light in thine eyes, save but the soul in thine uplifted eyes. I saw but them, they were the world to me. I saw but them, saw only them for hours, saw only them until the moon went down. But wild heart history seemed to lie entwined upon those crystalline celestial spheres. What dark a woe, yet how sublime a hope, how silently serene a sea of pride, how daring an ambition, yet how deep, how fathomless a capacity for love. But now at length dear Diane sank from sight into western couch of thundered cloud, and thou, a ghost amid the entombing trees, didst glide away, only thy eyes remained. They would not go, and never yet have gone, lighting my lonely pathway home that night. They have not left me as my hope have since. They follow me, they lead me through the years. They are my ministers, yet I their slave. Their office is to illumine and enkindle, my duty to be saved by their bright light, and purified in their electric fire, and sanctified in their Elysian fire. They fill my soul with beauty, which is hope, and are far up in heaven the star I kneel to. In the sad, silent watches of my night, while even in the meridian glare of day, I still see them still, two sweetly scintillant Venuses, unextinguished by the sun. Morning, sunny sunshine. And that was to Helen. I mean, chub, you're always late, aren't you? Spirits of the dead. And the soul shall find itself alone mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry to thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in thy solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are again, and death around thee, and their will shall then o'ershadow thee be still, The night thou clear shall frown, the stars shall look not down, their high throne in heaven, with light like hope to mortals given. But their red orbs without beam to thy weariness shall seem as a burning and a fever, which would cling to thee forever. But 'twill leave thee as each star the dewdrop flies afar. Now our thoughts thou canst not banish, now our vision near to vanish. No more like dewdrops from the grass, thy spirit shall thy pass. The breeze, the breath of God is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, shadowy yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token. How it hangs upon the tree, a mystery of mysteries. Very valid job. And I don't judge you for being late, but I'm always letting you know that you are. Though you do live on the other side, and though it bothers me not, I'll still be honest and truthful with you. Shall I go back to cute little love poems? Yes. Comfy little murmurs. Are my murmurs unintelligible? No, today we're just reading poetry and relaxing. Maybe I'll do Minecraft eventually, but right now I'm just relaxing. And then Nixie. I don't want to be just another character in your book, and much less I don't only want to be a chapter. I know what you've been through with heartbreak, and I only want to be what comes after. I want to inspire the epigraph, the epic love story you'll write. And if being a sappy romantic is wrong, well, I don't think I'll ever want to be right. I want to help you believe in your heart again, and trust that it won't lead you astray. When it comes to finding your soulmate's trust, the universe always makes sure there's a way. I've told myself, Celia, there's no one out there. No one is waiting for you to come home. But how callously ignorant I have been to think my soul could ever be here alone. There's parts of you in everything, and honestly, I don't even know it yet. But tragically beautiful, some of our best people we haven't even met. But one day we will, the sunniest day of all, a love so immense, we could never feel small. I like this author. He does an incredible job. Thank you for the follow, Ashton. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you, Patty. You as well. I appreciate the follow. And Cheesy Emu. Wow, there's been a few that I haven't noticed come in. And Little Sprudy. Thank you. Welcome to the menagerie. Next, what do we have? Look, Hyundai, it's been a little bit. How have you been doing? I think I'd like to visit the Poe Museum, but I'd have to go all the way to Virginia. I don't. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Not full ASMR with all the ear licking and noises, but close enough. I forget some of the weird emotes I have. Thank you for the headpats. Da, 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 da. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Welcome to Derry. Oh, what is that? And wow, Chub, calling me Dar is crazy. Explain to me. Wait, they made they made a series based on it? A TV series? Really? That's interesting. Chub, you might notice that there is a bunch of stuff not enabled today. There's a bunch of stuff not enabled constantly. The redeems do change daily. When we do ASMR, the nerd voice is always disabled. Because it's not a voice that can be done softly. Requires projection. Pancakes or waffles? Yes, because Southern voice does not require projection. I have to be loud to do the nerd voice. But Southern I do not. All I gotta do is drop back here, and I can keep that thing going exactly the same. So very, very easily. Waffles or pancakes? Can I choose a third option? I prefer crepes over either of them. I love crepes. Crepes are so very simple and delicious. Of course you can get some scritches, Sonny. I love crepes, especially just getting to roll them up with jelly or cream cheese or something inside of it. Cream cheese and jelly, maybe ham and cheese. Anything inside of a crepe, it's absolutely delicious. But I prefer Pfannkuchen, which is the German version of crepes. Sweet, a little thicker. What I grew up on. Have you ever had anything that was so... Of course I'll make you Pfannkuchen. Have you ever had something that you thought couldn't be any different, but then somebody else made it, and the meal was just awful? For me, that was when I was younger. Instant oatmeal. Instant oatmeal. When me or my parents used to prepare it, used to always be thick. When my grandmother came to visit one year, and instead of preparing it like they do, she made it really, really thin and liquidy, and it was just awful. And I always wondered how she managed to make the oatmeal so much different than they did. Sleep well, Anna. Sleep well. Brussels sprouts. Only had grapes once with Nutella and banana filling. That does sound really nice and lovely. Good morning, Misty. And good morning, Brooke. Yeah, with how heavily she diluted it. And then she's like, here, you can have milk to put into it to make it more the consistent you want. I'm like, it's already wrong. And then I had to go make it. And she was upset I didn't like her oatmeal. This was when I was like 5. Oh, gibbets, that's the worst. That is the worst. Now see, that's the thing, I do use milk and she used milk. I think she just put way too much milk in it. Good morning, Yuki. Good morning, good morning, good morning. The only thing I can think of as a way to mess up tea is by either A, I slept alright, how'd you sleep? Putting in sugar before you put in a tea bag, or leaving the tea bag in for so long that it turns the tea extra bitter. But even then, I don't usually mind it. Ooh, yeah, Nixie, I know what you mean. 5 to 6. Oh, I'll get some more sleep, Yuki. Here, my bed's empty, you can take that. I just imagine now how it would be. Can you believe it's Monday already? Lovely little voidlings, you're going to do amazing, alright? The week is just beginning, but it's going to be an incredible week. Trust me. Gonna put all those good vibes out right now. Make sure the rest of the week is perfect. Morning, Silverfang. We're gonna do great. All of us. By the end of this week, things will be even better than when they started. It'll come perfect. This week is gonna go great. Oh, don't jump in the ocean. I mean, if you're gonna jump in the ocean, sign over everything you own to me first, okay? That's valid, Gibbets, you should. This is my reminder that I'm actually on call this week. So lovelies, if you find me and I have to randomly drop from a stream, understand it was not intentional. Wait. No way. I'm not on call this week. I'm on call next week. Oh, happy day, oh, happy day. I'm not on call. See, this week is perfect. I've been dreading this week for so long because I was worried I'd be on call. But no. We're not on call. A nice surprise. I will be on call next week, so you know it won't be better, but that means that next week is Thanksgiving, and I have all my Thanksgiving stuff ready. Shoot. Is any of it gonna go bad in a week? I might need to get my salad stuff ready. I'll get more salad stuff for Thanksgiving. Speaking of, I'm gonna make myself a lovely Thanksgiving feast. And we can hang out on Thanksgiving for those of you who aren't either American or aren't hanging out with family. Maybe we'll watch like the Thanksgiving parade. I haven't done that in years. We should do that. That is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna watch the Thanksgiving parade. Morning, Lucy. I mean, I will stream nonstop. I think so. I don't think they've ever stopped doing it. The Macy Day Parade. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It'll be at 6:30 a.m. Mountain Time. You know what? Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll wake up extra early. I'll cook all the food. We'll start stream just a little bit later and we can watch the parade together. A Mario balloon. Wouldn't that be fun? Are you calling me? Wow. Good morning, Maddie. If he stomps on the turkey, yes, every year. It's it's more of a sign of opulence and capitalism, to be honest. This will be the 99th parade. They have had 99 parades. They've been doing this for almost 100 years. Busta Rhymes is gonna be there. K-pop Demon Hunters? Interesting. Oh, and I see the Mario balloon. And so many interesting balloons. That'll be cute. Next year will be the big 100. We'll have to do it again then. There was a Luffy balloon. Oh, that is cool. I'd like to see it. Let's take a look. Let's see. Luffy balloon. Oh, that was last year. Oh, I like that. Wait. Oh, it deflated in the middle of the parade. It deflated during the middle of the parade because his hat caught on a tree. Oh no. It was just the rim apparently, but that's still funny to me. So very, very funny. I hope Mario survives. His big nose might catch on something though, and that would be so funny to see his nose just floop. It's crazy to me that there's multiple shows, The Real Housewives of different states. Sonic. Oh, let's find out about the Sonic balloon. (1993). The eye ripped open and it deflated so quickly, apparently. You think they'd planned the round a little bit better, you know? That's rough. got caught on a street lamp and just absolutely destroyed the thing. 93, most people weren't even alive then. Wait a second. Macy Day's Thanksgiving Parade's most infamous balloon mishap from Sonic bursting and hurting a girl. So Sonic hurt a girl. And in 1956, Mighty Mouse came very close to crashing at Columbus Circle. Apparently one almost caused a plane crash somehow. Kermit the Frog's stomach was shredded after making contact with a tree during heavy rains. That's crazy. U.S. Thanksgiving is late this year. Isn't it always this time of year? What do you mean it's late? Tomcat almost caused... Yeah, there we go. In November 1932, a 60-foot tall Tomcat balloon almost caused a plane to crash. Bosses frantically spread the word to New York's news outlets to warn pilots to keep away from large inflatables in the run-up to the parade. One plane didn't steer clear of trouble. The shocking incident happened during a time when Macy's would free balloons into the sky at the end of the parade. Something hasn't been done since the nearly fatal event. However, people were given rewards if they located the balloons afterwards. 30 minutes after the inflatable was released, a flying instructor and a student flew their plane into the yellow striped Tomcat balloon. The plane ultimately went into a stale spin as the fabric from the balloon covered the aircraft's left wing. As the plane was approximately 250 feet above the rooftops over Queens, the plane was able to resume flying and safely landed. They did what? They would release the balloons at the end of the parade. Well, yes, Lucy, your Thanksgiving is based on a different event. Our Thanksgiving happens to something differently. Exactly the fourth Thursday in November. I had a teacher that used to be terrified of balloons. Like she had a phobia of balloons. And it's crazy to me that because somebody's fear doesn't make sense to other people, people just don't respect it. And so other teachers would terrify her with balloons because they thought it was funny. But like, how horrible is that? How horrible is that? To like take somebody's phobia and make fun of them with it because it doesn't make any sense to you. Right? But it was always seen as funny because, oh, it's not like anybody's getting hurt. But come on. Really? And I mean, it's not like it's kids doing this to her. Kids would make sense to me because kids don't understand this. But teachers doing it to another teacher, unless they just really hated her for some reason. Yeah, people are cruel. Well, these. I think we're almost at them. The mid or near. My brain has just shut up. Shut off. Can you hypnotize? I cannot. I'm not a hypnotist. Exactly. Grown adults. Oh, the Luffy balloon is coming back. The Luffy balloon is coming back. I'm excited. We might get to see it this year. You can never get Luffy down. I get it now, though. Apparently he was the widest balloon. Goku? Goku. There was a Goku. Interesting. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I guess because of Crunchyroll or something. But he had like his blue hair, and it looks like he's flying through the sky. Holy crap, he's massive. Wow. I was sponsored by Funimation and Toei Animation, but they only sponsored it in 2021 and 2023, so you might not see it now. Oh, there's gonna be a new one. There's gonna be a new one in its standard form. The other one was so much cooler looking though. It was so intense, but this one's a lot simpler. Crazy. I guess why not? How many balloons are there in the brain? Let's find out. Thank you for the handpans. 34 large balloons, 27 floats, and then 32 smaller balloons. Or it might only be 34 balloons. It has 27 floats, 33 clown groups, 11 marching bands, and 4 specialty units. Clown groups, yep. 4 balloonicles. What is a balloonicle? I need to see what a balloonicle is. Oh. A balloonicle is one of those vehicles that are a balloon. Like they're an inflated balloon that covers a vehicle. I will be there for the balloons. Nap time. Why? Why? Why would I ever do that? Mm-hmm. Oh. Alright, enjoy clown college, I guess. Then why don't you go do it, nap time? Why do you want me to do it? Mm. Yeah, then go do it. Why tell me to do it? Live the life that you want to live. I can't live it for you. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. That's fair. You know, you don't have to go to college. Hello, Red Faye. How you doing? Umami. No, no, that's too sad and bad. Well, I hope one day you can go climb your 14er. Till then, I hope you enjoy trying to get your pilot's license. Then you can just fly a plane instead of having to climb. And land your plane on a mountaintop. Thank you for the follow. When is my... Oh, right. No, that's not right. One second while I figure this out. Oh, that's fine. I forgot I have a Japanese lesson tomorrow. A clown minister sounds crazy. Oh, I hope you enjoy your butterfly exhibit. Are we talking living butterflies, or are we talking... Well, I guess it's winter. I hope they're living butterflies, but if not, it still sounds pretty. Hey, just your average dog, how you doing? Hello, spooky cats. How are you? Butterflies are cool. Though I am thinking about... Don't worry. Sorry about that. 1 second. Random clown fact: if clown wants to have their makeup. Oh. You know what I was thinking about? So, you know how clowns... It'll get better, Wolfie, trust me. You know how there's the clown museum where they have to put their face paint on an egg? And that makes it like their official clown makeup. It's like they make it official. What happens if a clown passes? Can somebody else get that makeup? Or are we eventually going to run out of clown makeup? So one day there's going to be no more clown makeup that they can do because they have to keep coming up with new ones. There's going to hit a day or a time in our lives where our clowns wear severely surreal makeup. We're going to be like, wow, that's insane. You know what? I'm going to get my own clown makeup and put it into the clown museum. Why not? up all of your weekends is absolutely amazing. Yes, all of everyone's week is going to be great. As you're saying, I would not steal anybody's crush, because I refuse to date anybody. Just enjoy your clown study. Hi, Neffy. How you doing? I don't think so, because it's not on like the angst and trademarks, because the Joker can't really submit his makeup. I'm just a dog. Hi, Bloods. How you doing? Let's look it up. Is the Joker's makeup trademarked? You know what's funny? His makeup isn't trademarked in the museum, but it is copywritten because it is the image of the Joker. And thus you couldn't use it technically. Still interesting. Alright, what do we have? Thank you for this check-ins. I'm just saying I love Lucky. A clown I would leave and never come back. I'm not becoming a clown, don't you worry. I'm such a good donkey. There you go, Jibbit. Well, enjoy sleeping then. Relax. Lay back. If you want more energetic streams, we do have more energetic streams every day at 4 p.m. MST. Don't know what I'm going to be doing today, but it should be fun. You know, I keep seeing really Kaigetsu. What's up, Kaigetsu? Cute little emote. Vomit Grub. Wait, there's somebody named Vomit Grub? Who is Vomit Grub? Morning, crazy Turkish lady. How you doing? I need to go look up Vomit Grub. Oh. They're such an interesting model. Very cute. What are they playing? They're making like... Wow. Oh. I love whatever this is. I love whatever this is. The aesthetic is so nice. The look of it is so cute. They're little alerts. And they're just making weird little pixely art. Interesting. Wait, who's ugly? Wait, okay, Gibbet said I need to see what this thread is. Oh, you're making fun of the Joker. I thought you were calling me ugly. I was like, Sheen's just ugly. Like, oh, sad. I was looking at Vomit Grub. I don't know what they do, but their stream looked really cool. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah. I hope you, are able to start getting better sleep soon. Alright, settings, be good. Enjoy college, study well, get a good job, make lots of money so you can spend it on me, okay? Don't forget, the more money you make, the more you can spend on me. Oh, hey, Southern Voice. I guess we're gonna do this one now, alright? Oh, what do you mean, now, Tom, you're gonna be a pilot. You'll have too much money. Buy me snacks. Bring me them airline dinners. Get me that fancy ones with the, thing for the follow. Y'all ever been in first class before? I went to first class one time, and it was on an amazing flight for it. I was going to Germany, and somehow they upgraded my flight randomly. And it was so very nice, so very nice. I had one of them seats that lay all the way back, turned to a bed, had my own little area. They bring me complimentary champagne, bought me a plate of cheeses and fruits. Now, to be fair, it was fancy in the way that, wasn't really fancy. It was fancy because it was on an airline, and compared to what you normally get, it was incredible. But I've had significantly fancier, just a standard restaurant. Still a lot of fun. And if I could do it again, I most certainly would. But I will say, them chairs are nice. But being 6'4" still makes it difficult. Oh, Lufthansa is lovely. Qatar, I mean, that's another level. I'd love to take one of those insane airlines, the ones where it's like $10,000 for a ticket. You basically get your own little private suite on the plane. Imagine that. A whole little room for yourself where you can lay in bed, walk around, you get yourselves full on meals. Oh, bed. Sunny Sunshine, I'd like to try them all. I would love to try them all. Let's do it. Wow, well, I mean, all male VTubers claim to be over 6 feet. It's time for you to ASMR video POV. You're on a trip in first class and use that as a write-off. Yeah, but I'm gonna make only comedy ASMR when it's not on the Patreon. Honestly though, see, there's only so much a tax write-off can do. If I buy a $10,000 flat and I use it as a write-off, that would require me to have at least $10,000 in taxes, and I doubt I'm gonna be making enough money for that one. At least not when it comes to my Twitch streaming. Really, Sonny? Sonny, give me like a year to hit partner and get established, and maybe we'll do a little event or something. I'll fly out to wherever you are, bring you all the ingredients, and we'll do like a little taste testing. I'll even hire you for the event. I'm not Turkish. I like Turkish food. Because the southern accent was redeemed. But it is now back to the normal accent. Hi, Microwave. You know, I love people with unique names, and Sinful Microwave, you definitely have one. I like all food, but yes, I do like Turkish food. Especially Turkish food that's in Germany. That's fair. That's fair, Sonny. Who's Turkish? Oh, we eat vitamins yet? Actually. Oh. So I had this idea of putting my vitamins on my desk, right? And they made it halfway to my table. So I don't have my vitamins with me. German Turkish food is a little bit different because it is more made for the German taste. It's still delicious though. I mean, it's like, Chinese in Scotland with their spice bag and stuff. Docom? I don't know what that is. That sounds interesting. Docom. Oh, Dokami. What's that? Germany's biggest Japan and Anime Expo. Oh, that's so cool. Not yet, though. I think I'll start attending conventions next year after we hit partner. Do little meet and greets. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Speaking of vitamins, one of my favorite gag bits for ASMR, POV ask grandchildren chat about your vitamins. That's lovely. I might be one of those TVs that go around at some of the conventions, though. Or I'll run a little, panel. Red flag. Sonny, you have been what? Can you explain that one to me? You gonna dress up as an anime girl? I'm not planning on it, no. No, come on. We're not leaving this one behind. Sonny, what did you do? Why were you in a cop car? Calenthea, you might have already redeemed it earlier. Calenthea, you did already redeem it. You're fine, sweetie. Oh, I'll tell your mom I say hi. Alright, Sunshine, type it out faster. I think my taste buds just rearranged. Because everything I'm eating suddenly tastes weird. And that's a worry. Enjoy your chicken nuggets. Come on, microwave. Tell your mom about me. Tell your mom all about me. I'll introduce myself to her, okay? Hello, microwave's mom. My name's LuckyJene. And, your, child here enjoys watching anime boys online whisper to them. Just as a reminder, I'm also a dog boy, so they like specifically watching Dog boys talk softly to them. Yes, it's a very normal thing for people their age. You should give them money so that they can give it to me. Thank you. Alright, sure that. Arf arf. Oh, can you imagine how awful it would be to just one day have your taste buds stop working or working differently and so everything just tastes wrong? That'd be a nightmare. So I went to this con with my friend Rice. They decided to do tee because my money burns too. Police had a booth at the con and I'm a nerd, so I had to learn what the new key in the cars are. Someone else was in the passenger seat, so the officer opens the back seat. It's me being handcuffed in the back of a cop car. I'm such a good doggy. Thank you for the redeemed silverback. I've been in a cop car once. And the reason I was in a cop car was because I got lost while I was in Germany. And the cops found me and they're like, oh no, this sad little boy is crying as he's lost in Germany. We'll put him in the back of our car. And they drove me home. Reminds me of COVID. I know this is awful. I know this is awful. But I really wish we were back in a situation where everybody could be remote, working from home. Because that was so nice, having that period in time when there's just nobody around. And we just worked from home and put on masks when we went out and social distance. Maybe it's just a person who's more introverted, but I loved that experience. Thank you for the follow, Jules. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I haven't been fingerprinted at a cop station, but I have been fingerprinted because I have worked for the government. So, Kona, why were you locked in a Domino's freezer? You go to Domino's and you just I prefer Pizza Hut, so they locked you away. And with COVID, everything just being unprecedented times, things just felt more peaceful. Enjoy the lurkies. Woof. Thank you for that, pants. Oh, that's fair. People thought it would be hilarious. That's awful. I'm sorry, Sakona. I feel like the quarantine kind of showed us how nice things could be if we not. Valid. Valid. That'll do it. That'll do it. The world would be so nice. I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing. I used to think there was these things called kids write jokes. And I used to think it was the funniest thing. Also, do you know how awful it's been though for like skyscraper companies? The amount of businesses that realize that they're spending so much money on like running offices. I work in Denver, okay? And this isn't going to be a spoiler, but there is a place across the street from the place I work that is a giant skyscraper. Like it is big. It has so many floors. It has one business. For the longest time, I had no businesses. There's just a security guard that always worked the front desk. And that was the only person really in the building, except whoever had to come by and clean it every once in a while. You know how insane that is? Oh, it's okay, Cody. It's okay. No, it's alright. I appreciate you coming by. Does that mean you raided into an empty channel? I have only about like 15 minutes left of my stream anyways, but I appreciate it anyways. You know what, let's still give you a shout out. Shout out. I'm Beamy. Wait. I'm struggling so hard to do this. Go check them out, lovelies. And remember, it is the KMS. No, don't you dare. It is the thought that counts. I feel you, Glenthie. I feel you. I mean, always feel free to raid, but definitely consider your audience when raiding. One of my Oshis is a kind of similar to me, but you know, the opposite gender, a girl failure kind of tomboyish experience. And all of her audience are like men who are like her vibes. And she rated into me, and I'm like, while I do love your content, those men are never gonna enjoy my stream. Hello, Omar. What's up? Yeah. Oh, I mean, she's fantastic. I love her stuff. She's very goofy and fun. I'm good, Beamy. Do I want to know that? I do know the name of the bit, but I can't remember the name of it right now. So tell me, nephew, what is the name of the big fan company? I always stream around this time. I stream every day, 3:30 MST to 5:30 MST. And except Saturday, Sunday, which those ones changed, but my girlfriend left me and I'm good now. Well, I'm good. Glad your girlfriend leaving was a good thing, I suppose. Well, Calenthe, feel free to admire me. I always appreciate it. That is what they're called, isn't it? Nap time. I've seen them, and there's some high quality fans. Where were we? Oh, Carmia. Carmia, how's your day going? How's work going? You doing well with work? Did you? Yeah, that's awful. I mean, it's the name of the company. You know, you have to be a really good company at what you do if you can have a curse word in the name of your business name and people still buy it. In fact, people prefer it. They're good. Yeah, exactly. The Sofa King. or the faux king. Alright. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so I suppose we could read some poetry to end, right? What should we read? We haven't read The Raven in a little while. Should we do The Raven? I don't know why I'm asking. I can just read it and ignore what you say. You ready? Oh, we could do Goodnight Moon. Okay, we'll do Goodnight Moon. Here we go. I was not expecting it to make noise. 1 second. There we go. Goodnight Moon by Margaret Wise Brown. And there were 3 little bears sitting on chairs, and 2 little kittens, and a pair of mittens. I guess it's not too loud, is it? We'll unmute it. And a little toy house, and a young mouse, and a comb and a brush, and a bowl full of mush. And a quiet old lady who was whispering hush. Good night, room. Good night, moon. Good night, cow jumping over the moon. Good night, light, and the red balloon. Good night, bears, and good night, chairs. Good night, kittens, and good night, mittens. Good night, clocks, and good night, socks. Good night, little house, and good night, mouse. Good night, comb, and good night, brush. Good night, nobody. Good night, mush. And good night, the old lady whispering hush. Good night, stars. Good night, air. Good night, noises everywhere. There you go. Flip HTML, what is this? Interesting. You all need to go to bed right now. Bedtime. And we'll do one last one before we end. Let's see. You ready? I don't know, I think it takes about 10 minutes to get through, but we'll try. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, champing at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books erased of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, and it is nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly, your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you, ere I opened wide the door. Darkness there, nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dreamed to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." And unfortunately, that's as far as we'll get today, because I gotta head out, lovelies. But let's see who we have that we can raid into. What is this? We gotta find a quick ASMR to raid into. Unless I want to raid you into something stupid. Oh, that's French. You know what? We're gonna raid you into Yuki. Yuki's great. Yuki's fine. I can trust Yuki. Instead of, yeah. Y'all say hi to Yuki for me, okay? I need to find more ASMR artists to raid into. What do you mean kitties? We can't, there's no kitties to raid into. What kittens? Anyways, y'all be good. I'll see y'all later. You've all been so amazing as always. I appreciate you so very, very much. I hope you do amazing today. We'll do a little boom boom. Evie Rain. There's your lovely raid message. I'll be back later for you, okay? Mwah. Mwah. Thank you for hanging out. Bye, lovelies.